What's up, everyone? I'm your host, Vic Choxy, and welcome to today's edition of Cholk Talk, brought to you by Sports Intel. Today's guest is my guy, Connor Allen. If you gamble, love betting on props, or are into fantasy football, Connor's your guy. So, before we jump off today, I'll let him tell you guys where you can find him. But let's do this. Let's kick this off. Connor, how you doing today, my man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the intro.
No problem. Thanks for jumping on. Sorry for the delay today. I had to go out and vote like I was telling you, so I'm sorry I'm running a little late. I know how important your time is, but I appreciate you coming on, man. You're one of my favorite follows on Twitter when it comes to gambling on props, so I'm excited to kind of pick your brain on a couple of games, and let's jump into it. But before we get into the games, I'll always like to ask my guests, how did you get into gambling, fantasy football, kind of into this landscape, whether for work or, personal? How'd you get into it all?
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of two different stories. For gambling, it was mostly like, I started gambling when I was younger, and like would make like Bovada accounts like under my dad's name and
Yeah.
like before I was even 18, and just like to get some money down here and there. And then obviously, gambled throughout college and like, largely unsuccessfully. But I started to get a little smarter, do some more research. And at that time, that's kind of about the same time that I started writing. And was able to, get a few writing gigs here after starting my own website and started getting a little more recognition. And then, I don't know, probably like 5 or 6 years ago, I started like combining it like, hey, maybe I can, start producing good content on gambling, because at the time, and I still don't think that there's like a ton of like great gambling content that people actually, use analytics the right way or thinking about games the right way. So there's just a lot of like garbage that's put out there. And like there is definitely some good content, but I just don't think there's enough. And so like a lot of the mainstream gambling content, I just don't think is very good. And I think that's what, me and a bunch of other people are trying to set out to do and change that and just make people smarter. So yeah, that's kind of how we're here now.
No, I love that. And you're right? Ever since Pass Plug got repealed, everyone got into the game, right? It doesn't matter if you know about gambling or not, or anything, big companies, small companies, everybody is trying to get a piece of the pie. So it's nice. And you guys definitely do a great job. And, like I was telling you offline, I subscribe to your props. I love what you do in the prop game. And
Appreciate that.
There's a guy, Odds Maker, I'm sure you know him.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of guys that I really respect, and because it's about the process. We're not going to win like every single bet, right? Like otherwise, me and you wouldn't be on this show. We'd be chilling and like on an island right now and just kick it, right? But I appreciate the work you guys do and just how you go through it. So I love that story. Let's jump into some of these games, because I love getting kind of every guest's mindset. Everybody does things differently when it comes to betting on games, right? So I like to highlight 4 or 5 big games every weekend and then just pick your brain a little bit. And I'll give you some of my thoughts on it, but I'll kick it off to you when it comes to the first game. Let's go with the hometown squad. You live in Chicago. I live in Chicago. Bears Saints. The line is up to 4.5 in some places, right? They're Allen Robinson, Cody Whitehair, both questionable, it looks like. We'll find out a little bit more later today, but I'll open it up to you, man. Is there a prop, a side, or a total you like in that game?
Yeah, so I actually was able to grab the Saints on a look-ahead line at -2.5 before the Rams-Bears game. So this is like, over a week ago. And not that I really thought that the Rams were going to, dismantle the Bears like they did, but it happened. And, I just thought that getting the Saints at under 3 points against a very overrated Bears team was great value. Now it's looking at like 4.5, even 5 at some spots. Yeah, exactly. So I'm happy. I'm going to sit on my 2.5. I'm definitely not going to take any action the other way. In terms of props, though, I think that even if Allen Robinson does play, like Darnell Mooney has looked awesome. He had 155 air yards last week, played 89% of the snaps. And actually, I mean, he dusted Jalen Ramsey a few times. It's just
he did.
Nick Foles wasn't able to get him the ball. So, and I mean, that's not necessarily all Nick Foles' fault, because the offensive line was, giving him a lot of heat. But yeah, so I think that maybe some Darnell Mooney props could be good to attack here in this spot against the Saints.
I love it. He's looked good since day one, and all the beat writers raved about him before the season started. And since game one, he's been open, and he makes he runs really good routes. He's got that speed that they can definitely, if they can keep the quarterback up for more than 2 seconds, maybe we can hit one. And so you're right. I like that. And I'm with you when it comes to this Bears game, man. I just don't see the offensive line is just so bad. And now James Daniels is out, Cody Whitehair is out. I don't in the wind, right? You're big into fantasy. That's another thing that I wanted to pick your brain on a little bit is there's 4 games this weekend where there's supposed to be 15, 20 mile per hour winds, right? How does that affect your process? Have you thought about it for this game at all when it comes to like a Mooney prop, for example?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on the wind. So Chris Allen over at 4for4 did some awesome research on like when wind matters and like how that impacts quarterbacks yards per attempt. So I actually used to write a weather article at Roto World like a few years ago, and basically what Chris found, and I utilize this research a lot, is basically Chris found is that wind only starts to matter when it's 15 miles per hour or more. And even between 15 to 20 miles per hour, like a quarterback's yards per attempt on average drops like 0.2, like point or 0.01. Like it's like very marginal. But then the only time that it like really matters, you see like a whole yard per attempt drop is like after 20 miles per hour and usually 25 miles per hour plus. So like 15 to 20, if I have like a strong lean like Mooney and it comes out at like, you know, the props come out at like the 40-ish yards, I'm still okay with taking you over. But, you know, if the winds are going to be like 25 miles per hour plus with gusts, I'm definitely fading it, especially for a guy with like Mooney who has like higher ADOT. So like a little bit of wind, I'm not too worried. You know, anything up to like 20, and then I really start to consider like, hey, you know, maybe I need to just stay off of it.
I like that. That's why you got to listen to this show, and that's why you got to check out 4for4, right? Those are the kind of good tidbits, right? For people that don't like. A lot of people see like rain or snow, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I'm hammering the under on everything," and that's not really the case. Historically, we've seen that, right? So
yeah, I mean, people just freak out about the weather, man. Was kind of my biggest takeaway from writing the article, which is weird because like most of the article is just telling people to calm down rather than like saying you need to worry about this, which maybe doesn't make for such good content. But like I was just trying to be, you know, genuine and just be like, hey, like this isn't a big deal. Winds aren't going to be that big of a deal. Like the amount of times that people are like, oh, there's going to be this crazy blizzard or like crazy like winds, and then they roll to game time. It's like 15 mile per hour winds, and the game still, you know, shoots over the total. I mean, outside of I don't know, there was a huge rainstorm or like the blizzard like a few years ago. I mean, I don't see too much impact. So
no, that's good. I like the breakdown, and I'm with you on that game. I'll be really surprised if the Bears can keep it close. So we'll see. I mean, I think they're going to need some like defense. Eddie Jackson's going to need to run 2 back like Mike Brown used to back in the day if they want to be able to score. I feel like the weather favors good running teams, right? That's another thing. And so again, in this matchup, they got the better coach, the better quarterback, the better running game, and so it's not looking good, man. I got them 5-4 after the next couple of weeks, and let's hope I'm wrong. The next game I want to talk to you about is one that I really like. It's Patriots at Bills. I feel like the Bills have been probably waiting for this game their entire life, and the line opened at 3. It's up to 3.5 and now 4 at a bunch of places. Edelman, I know, is out. Stephen Gilmore might be out this game, so some word is coming out he's injured. So what are you thinking on this game? Anything you love?
Honestly, nothing that I really love. I think that the Patriots should have plenty of success rushing the ball. The Bills are dead last in rushing success rate allowed. And I think the Pats, like, you know, I don't think they really want Cam Newton to drop back and throw the ball, you know, 40 times a game. That's just not how they optimally function. And I mean, after last week's disaster, I actually think this is kind of like a make or break game for the Patriots. I mean, if they lose this game, I think there's a decent chance that they have a fire sale for basically whoever, you know, they have left. There was talk of Gilmore being on the block already. And then there was, I think Albert Breer reported that anyone is available on their team for trade. But yeah, so I mean, in this one particularly, I think it is worth noting. I went back and looked at Josh Allen against the Patriots. He's played against them 3 times in his career. And while they used to have a better defense, I think it is interesting that they've only scored 10, 12, and 17 points. Josh Allen's completed 48% of his passes, where it's 6 yards per attempt with a 3 to 5 touchdown interception ratio. I know that those are much better Patriots defenses, and I'm not saying that he's going to have a sub 50% completion rate, but I don't particularly think that he's going to explode in this spot. I think that Bill Belichick can do as much as he can to scheme Josh Allen to not playing at his best. So that's my take, is probably just to stay away, maybe even lean Patriots at +4, but I don't know. I don't have much confidence to put much money on it, if anything.
Yeah, it's a tough game. I can see it going either way. I've seen some really smart guys on both sides of the coin here as well. And just like the next game that we'll talk about. But I like the Bills, man. I think they've been waiting for this game for the last couple of years. This is their chance to finally like prove that they are the cream of the crop in the division, right? And what better time to get the Patriots than on their way down? But you never know with Hoodie, right? Like he's always up to something.
Exactly.
But to go to your point about the fire sale, like I feel like Hoodie this year is like playing chess. Like he's already ahead of everyone. Like he had all the most people opt out for COVID. Like he's trying to get into that Trevor Lawrence, like Justin Fields game, I feel like. So that's why another reason why I think like they're going to lose this game. And like you said, then they're maybe the fire sale is already on and he's ahead of everyone, right? So
I thought that was the great part about adding Cam Newton is that if Cam Newton was back, you have a playoff contending team. If he's not back, then you're going to be in contention for a top quarterback. So I think it's just it was a great, very volatile move. And we've seen both sides of that. I mean, Cam Newton played really well the first few games.
He did.
And then post-COVID, he's looked just like dreadful. So I don't know if that has anything to do with COVID or maybe he just wasn't that good. But I think we saw enough of him to say that he was good pre-COVID and that if it continues. Sorry, I got muted there. So look, there are other things going on. Like I don't know. It's tough for me to say that it wasn't the right move. I think either way, it's a good look for the Patriots.
It is. So that'll be a fun game to watch. I'm definitely just excited to watch that game and see what happens and see if the Bills are legit contenders. The last 3 weeks, they haven't looked that good. So, this is a big game for them. Let's see how that one runs through. And the next game, the game of the weekend, in my opinion, we got Ravens Steelers, right? So this is going to be a heavyweight battle. The line is definitely moving a lot. It opened at 5.5, and I saw 6 in some places, and now it's kind of at 3.5 or 4, depending on your book. What do you like in that game?
So for me, I like the Steelers at 4, and maybe 3.5, but I think that the Ravens -3 is probably the right line. So there's not a ton of value. I've been on the Steelers pretty much every week. I think they're still very undervalued in the market and have been. But their defense has been elite in pretty much every category except for explosive pass rate, which they rank 28th. But Baltimore's defense has also been really strong. They actually rank 1 spot behind them in DVOA. And they also don't have a clear weakness like the Steelers, letting up, big plays to the passing game. And then on the other side of the ball, though, I thought it's also worth noting is that they are 2 spots behind Pittsburgh in offensive DVOA. So like their defense and offenses match up very similarly. But the thing is, I think Pittsburgh's offense still hasn't fully gotten rolling yet. I think that there's actually there's still some untapped potential. And though either way, how this game goes, I think the Steelers are very much live to win the Super Bowl. I took a little bit of action on them prior to the season at like 25-1 to win the Super Bowl, just because they had an elite defense last year, but like the worst offense in the league. And now with Big Ben back, they've shown to be a decent offense, but I still think that they can take another step forward. And so for this one, I took Steelers, and then I also grabbed Hollywood Brown over 51.5 yards earlier today. It's available at PointsBet, just because of what I was talking about with the Steelers allowing the 28th most explosive passes. And Hollywood Brown has 27% of the team's target share, 45% of their air yards. And he's hit that number in 4 of 6 games. So as long as the Ravens aren't grinding clock, which is basically how all of his props lose, is that, they run it was the Texans game. He had like 40 yards at half. And then they threw the ball 7 times in the entire second half. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So if they're not doing that, I think Hollywood goes over, gets like 60, 70 yards. I like that over. What are you on in this one?
That's nice. It's a good hedge for your Steelers bet in a way.
For sure.
Right? Like if it explodes, then you're good. Like you got that. So I was liking the Ravens initially, man. Harbaugh off of a bye, and I feel like this is a big statement game for them. And kind of the reasons you pointed out, those explosive plays, I feel like they can get. But to your point, we've seen Lamar and that offense kind of grind to a stop and not show up in big moments, right? And again, he's been amazing. They've been great the last couple of years, but people always remember the struggles more than they remember like good things, right? So we remember that Chiefs game, remember the playoffs a little bit, Titans game. So it'll really depend, man. To your point, the Steelers have looked awesome. They look like one of the most complete teams in the NFL. They're right. Chiefs, Steelers, Titans to me are the cream of the crop in the AFC, and so it'll be interesting to see. I just like the value that I was getting in the line, just because before the year the look aheads were like at 6. Even last week we saw 6, 5.5s, and I see it at 3 in some books. So this might be one that I maybe just waited out. What I've been doing is live betting a lot in games like this. Whoever scores first, if I can grab points on the other side, this might be one of those that I'm looking at.
To be fair, I also actually have a future on the Ravens. So it's like the Ravens, the Steelers are the only 2 teams that I bet on to win the Super Bowl, from what I remember. And so, yeah, it's like I took Ravens at 8-1. Actually, as I was cashing my tickets from the last Super Bowl, I took them and then just because I thought there was not going to be a better number than that the rest of the year. And that was correct. I think, what are they, like 5.5-1, something like that now, something like that. So, and then Steelers 25-1. So I do think the Ravens are an awesome team too. And I don't think that I'm going to have too much money either side, to be honest. It's probably maybe like a light play on the Steelers and then probably go a little heavier on Hollywood Brown.
No, that's nice. I like that hedge. I'm going to look into that too and see what my book has. You said PointsBet has that?
Yeah, they just released it at 51.5. And
okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably about the right number. I just think that he does more than that. I don't know. We could see like maybe some 55s or like DK or whatever. They open up all the props today, and like DK PointsBet usually releases it first, and then DK will release some as the day goes on.
Awesome. When we jump off this, I'm gonna next time on these calls, I need to have my phone out. So like once guys like you give me a good play, I'll be like, hold on, let me get it in right now, before it goes up. So next game, another game. Again, the games that I've picked, I've seen really smart people on both sides. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. The Colts at Detroit. So I like the Colts in this one. Detroit's been playing well, but I feel like the Colts go as Darius Leonard goes, and he's back. They got the bye week at the right time, and they're the better team defensively, DVOA-wise. When he plays, they're like top 5 in every statistical category usually. So wanted to pick your brain a little bit on this. I've seen some movement on the line. It started at 3. Now I'm seeing some 2.5s out there. So what are you liking in this Colts-Lions game?
Sorry, it just froze for a second here. Yeah, so I'm on the Colts. I'm on the Colts here as well. I grabbed them at 2.5, probably a week or so ago. Just kind of in a look ahead spot here. I thought that it would end up closing around 3, and I did like the Colts here. And particularly the matchup that I thought was going to be good is that I think that this is when they, unleash Jonathan Taylor. Detroit has not been very good in the trenches, just in general. 29th in adjusted line yards allowed, 25th in pressure rate, 25th in adjusted sack rate. So I think Jonathan Taylor could be in for a big week, coming out of the bye. Like you said, he's seen his snap share rise in 4 consecutive games. So I actually already grabbed a piece of his receiving action here at 15.5 receiving yards. He saw 4 targets in their last game. And so I don't know. I think in this spot for him too, playing with Phillip Rivers, I think it's part of a function of that offense. If you're a running back that's going to play time, you're going to see targets if they're passing the ball. So if he's going to keep playing like 70% of the snaps, I keep seeing him. I think he's going to keep seeing like 4 or 5 targets at pretty much every game. And in this spot where they're favorites, there's not much of a risk of him being game scripted out of the game with Hines playing pretty much the entire time and them down by 10. At least I don't think so, based on the line of 3 and the Colts being what we both anticipate being the better team here. So, yeah, I like some Jonathan Taylor props. I'm looking at the rushing yards at like 70 already. So it's kind of a lot. I do think that he could, easily hit the over there, but the market did a pretty good job there of setting a line. So I like the receiving yards a little bit more. We haven't projected for I think 28 at 4 for 4. So
nice. I'm glad we're on the same side there. And I do love me some Jonathan Taylor this week. If not this week, then what week, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The perfect matchup. I'm just always a little scared putting my money behind Phillip Rivers just because you just never know, man. He can change that game with the snap. One snap, he'll just turn it over. So that always concerns me. And he hasn't done as well against zone defense. And I know Detroit's playing more and more zone as the weeks have gone by a little bit. So the only concern I have, but I do think they're the better team on both sides of the football. So I'm going to be backing them this weekend. And then leaving it up to you, man. I love kind of opening it up to my guests. Those are the big games that I thought I wanted to pick your brains on. But Any props, sides, totals that I didn't talk about or that you're loving?
So I talked about two of the early props that I hit already. And usually today is when I release most of my props early, and then I'll have my article come out on Saturday. But I hit Philly -8 really hard, and I think that that's moving up to 10 as we're speaking right now. And I think I mean, that's what I was trying to tell everyone in the 4for4 chat, is that this is going to close at 10 or higher. I mean, the Cowboys right now. So, I mean, if we take a step back, like you think about the Cowboys, Eagles, you think, man, 10 points is a lot. But then when you look at the Cowboys right now, they're ruling out Ben DiNucci, a guy who was like a 2-year starter, James Madison, and was like a late round pick by the Cowboys, playing behind an offensive line that is not been playing well. And then, I mean, obviously he has weapons, but like I think Lamb caught 0 of his 6 targets. Gallup caught like 1 of 5 last week. They lost by 22 points to the Washington football team. And their defense is just abysmal. It's like one of the worst in the league. So I don't really care if the Eagles are like bad, or even like just average. I mean, they should win by like 20. I mean, this is like, I actually talked about this. Like, what would the spread be of the Jets and the Cowboys, right now on a neutral field? I think it would be kind of close. Like, I mean, they're right now without a competent quarterback play are a bottom 3 team.
They are. No, I agree 100%. That's why I was on the Washington football team last game, just eyes closed. I was like, there is no way these guys are going to lose because of what I saw the game before. And just that offensive line, unfortunately, because of injuries and other things, it's just Swiss cheese right now. And like you said, the D is just terrible. And and their offense and their playmakers were the only thing that they had going for them. And those guys they don't have a chance. Like you said, Lamb last week, like just watching that game on Red Zone, like they weren't even on Red Zone. Like they were, it wasn't even close. So I'm with you there. I like it. I'm actually going with Philly in my Survivor League this weekend. So I'm trying to save the Chiefs for next week. I know everyone's going to be on the Chiefs this weekend, but I love Philly in that spot. So before we wrap up, then I will ask you your pick of the week. It could be anything, a prop aside. Is Philly your pick of the week, or is there anything else that you like?
Yeah, probably in terms of like if I had to only put my money on one thing, I would probably say that. But I also think that I think there's a nice over here. Tennessee, Cincinnati game. Both of these teams are top 3 in terms of offensive efficiency, or this is a top 3 offensive efficiency team in Tennessee against Cincinnati defense that's bottom 7 in overall efficiency. Cincinnati's literally just bad against the run and the pass. And Burrow is squaring off against a Tennessee defense that probably will be without Clowney, and they were already 29th in passing success rate allowed and 27th in pressure rate. So, I mean, Burrow's biggest thing is that if he's under pressure, he's still able to make plays. If he's not under pressure, like he is awesome. Like he has been playing really well. So against a Tennessee defense, which is, I mean, fine, but they're, without Clowney, and just like this is a spot here where both offenses should have their way. Burrow's just going to keep throwing to catch up. And I think Tennessee is a real threat to score like close to 40 in this spot. Yeah. So, I mean, the over-under right now has been dropping, actually. It opened at like 55. We're looking at, it dropping down to the low 50s. I don't really get it too much. I know I've heard a few smart people talking about the under just because the Bengals may be a little bit overrated. But in this spot, I just don't see the pace slowing down at all, and I don't see either team getting stopped too much. So I like the over there as well.
Yeah, I like it. I see some 52s out there actually right now. So if you like the over, that's a good number to grab. And I feel like it's a get right spot for Tennessee a little bit. So they're gonna try to score. And like you said, Burrow's been impressive, man. And every game you watch, like I call him backdoor Burrow. I'm sure it's out there on Twitter, but like he doesn't give up. Like even on the last drive, right? There's some teams that just like check down. They want the game to be over with. Like they're trying to score and put up points every single last drive of his that I've seen. And that's why like the back door of the over is always alive with him. So that's awesome, man. So thanks a ton for jumping on today. Before we get off this call, I want you to let all our listeners and video watchers know where they can find your work.
Yeah, so most of my stuff is on Twitter at Connor Allen NFL, and then I post it on 4for4.com, and I have a podcast every week with Ryan Noonan that should be on your feeds now, and then I'll post a player prop article every weekend, and yeah, that's mostly it.
I love it, man. If you guys are betting on games and doing fantasy football and betting on props, you guys need to check out Connor for sure. So I appreciate it, man. Let's have a good weekend in the books.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Well, no problem. We'll see you soon.